Very briefly, some of you may have the question, what on earth is this all about in terms of what is Marketplace Connections? We try to do three things. We do business connections, we do friendship, and lastly, we do spiritual connections. This last week clearly illustrated that. I was meeting with a friend of mine for coffee in Bellevue. He runs an organization down there, a business, and we talked about him being a speaker at Marketplace Connections in Bellevue, probably in March or April. So we had a good business connection. He's also becoming a good friend, so our friendship is developing. Lastly, he has a nephew that lives in India who's kind of on a spiritual journey with a whole bunch of questions. So I'm going to go to India in March for about 2 weeks. And he said, would you meet with my friend, because you might have some good ideas for some of his spiritual questions that he has. So all that happened just in coffee in 1 hour. So we hope that that is true here also. So internationally, we need to stay connected, okay? All right? So please exchange emails and things like that. I'm excited that Paul is our speaker this morning. Paul has over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. He currently leads the tech team at Flow Energy, a small startup out in Woodinville. He delivers next-generation solutions for energy-efficient, cost-effective, comfortable commercial buildings. The thing I liked about his resume, though, was this one line in here. Paul has a passion for learning what makes things tick. Is that true, Carrie?
Yes.
Yes. Is he still doing that? She's sighing. I'm excited that Paul is here to speak to us. He's got some great examples of this whole theme of excellence. So give Paul a warm welcome, please.
Thanks, John, and Marketplace Connections for having me here today to speak to you guys. Thanks for everyone who's attending to give me the opportunity to share a little bit about my story and my perspective on an important topic. But first, I have a few confessions to make to this group. The first one is if you decided to come to lunch today because of this picture with dark hair, I'm sorry that I might have disappointed you. This actually was, it's like, I think 9 years old. I think it was from our wedding day. And it was the best picture I could come up with. I also want to confess today that my talk doesn't exactly follow the bullet points that were in the brochure and on the website. Back in October when John asked me to speak today on culture of excellence, I gave an outline of what I wanted to share. But as I've reflected on excellence over the last couple months, it's my thought process kind of led me into a different direction. So I'll cover all the same important points, but there may be a couple things that I had said I would talk about, but maybe I won't. But if that is disappointing to you, I'm happy to grab a cup of coffee and we can chat about it further. So a bit of an introduction. My name is Paul Carney. I live here in Edmonds with my wife, Carrie, and our son, Cole. I'm currently the Vice President of Technology at a company called Flow Energy. We're a small startup located in Woodinville. Like John said, we're involved in the HVAC industry and about making buildings more energy efficient and more conservative with their energy costs. I also lead a group of technology-minded people who like to help nonprofit groups with their technology needs. So I heard a lot of people that are involved with nonprofits, and if there's ever anything we can do to help, please let us know. So at Flow Energy, we're building these next-generation systems that help large campuses save lots of money on their heating and cooling costs. We focus on things like airports and universities and hospitals. And I think the best analogy of what we do is, has anyone seen the movie Moneyball? Yes. So Moneyball is a story in 2002 with the Oakland A's where they disrupted the way that baseball players were recruited and selected. And so prior to the Oakland A's, everything was done on gut feel. It was all about how a scout felt about a player. But the Oakland A's took a data-driven approach to selecting and recruiting baseball players. And so they, on a small budget, put together a winning team that made it all the way into the postseason. And while they didn't win the championship, they really fundamentally changed the way that baseball recruiting was done. Likewise, at Flow Energy, in the HVAC industry, so much of what is done based on gut feel. And at Flow Energy, we instead install sensors that gather lots of data, big data. We load it up into the cloud, and then we can do this energy analysis that helps people save money. And our customers save like 30% on their heating and cooling bill. So we're just getting started. It's very exciting stuff that we're involved with. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about the topic of excellence. So what is excellence anyway? Well, the dictionary defines it as the quality of being very good or extremely good. And some other ways that they talk about it is a state of perfection, or something that surpasses ordinary standards, or perhaps a state of superiority or eminence. I don't know if you guys remember Bill and Ted, but Bill and Ted said that everything was excellent, right? So when I was considering what I thought excellence was about, I did what anybody would do in 2015, is I went to Facebook and I posed a question to my network saying, how does excellence look in your life? And these are some of the things that people said. First of all, this guy was pretty funny. He said, excellence is having other people write the outline for your talk. So, caught me. This is my sister, and she said that excellence is that her family is fed, her family is healthy, the family is loved, just food in her belly and a roof over her head. The guy who said that, he made that joke earlier, he said, here's the real answer. It's a young child doing their best. It's an educator spending the time needed. It's the ability to applaud someone else. And someone else said, excellence is inspiring others to succeed. So what were some of the definitions that you guys had at your table on excellence? Anybody want to share one?
Consistency, integrity.
That's right. Oh, that's right. We shared one earlier. Well, my definition, in the end, I don't think excellence is really about perfection. It's about putting your best effort forward in everything that you do, regardless of the circumstance. In the Bible, Paul wrote to his friend Titus, and he said that excellence is showing yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, showing integrity and dignity. There's a guy, his name is Ralph Marston, and he publishes a blog called The Daily Motivator, and he says that excellence is not a skill, but it's an attitude. And I really like that. So to me, excellence is about craftsmanship. And you think about a carpenter, a really skilled carpenter who builds these really beautiful creations. It's that craftsmanship, and it's the attention to detail that goes into that work. It's about pride, about your work, and about your interactions with others. I think as leaders, it involves creating an environment that's encouraging and motivating to enable others to put their best effort forward. And all of us also look to leaders ourselves for motivation, whether it's our boss, or maybe the board of directors, or maybe your wife. And in those circumstances, we're really responsible for making sure that we're putting our best effort forward in all circumstances, regardless of what the situation might be. And when everyone is seen as contributing to the best of their ability, we begin to see this culture of excellence emerge. So there's a lot of aspects to excellence. I've chosen 3 key components to talk about today. And rather than going through frameworks and leadership decision matrices, I'm just going to share some stories from my life and from my career that exhibit what these 3 components are. So the first one is freedom and responsibility. There's investing in others, and humility. Now, these are not the only 3 things that generate the type of excellence that we're looking at, but they are 3 things that have helped me through my life and have led me to this point in my career. So let's take a look at each of these components. So the first one is freedom and responsibility. This is something that we can do as leaders to help others excel. The technology industry has some very interesting cultures. Google and Facebook are known for their lavish perks like free massages and free lunch. Microsoft, I don't know if you guys see the Microsoft buses driving around. They take you to work and bring you back home for free. And all of these companies are trying to create this culture that will attract high-performing people, people who will excel. And Netflix, there we go, is another tech company that has an interesting culture. And at Netflix, they believe that their culture of excellence comes from giving employees responsibility for achieving great things, and then empowering them with the freedom to execute as they see fit. They believe that responsible employees are self-motivating, self-disciplined, and self-aware. They're the type of people who stop to pick up the trash off of the floor. Netflix has this quote that says, "Responsible people thrive on freedom and are worthy of freedom." So at Netflix, there's no top-down directives on how to build something new. There's no heavy-handed rules or processes or procedures that you have to follow. Every employee is trusted that once they have their goals, that they will perform the work to the best of their ability and in the most efficient way that they know possible. Where many companies limit employee freedom as they grow bigger, Netflix strives to grow the freedom that's given to their employees as they continue to grow. In the book, there's a book, Drive, and the author, who is Daniel Pink, examines what motivates humans, what are true motivating factors of humans. And he proposes that the carrot and stick approach of monetary reward is a mistake. Instead, he says that the biggest motivators for humans are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And at Netflix, they've really embraced this philosophy as part of their DNA. The freedom and responsibility given to their employees keep them motivated and efficient. Understanding that freedom at Netflix is not absolute, just like freedom of speech is not absolute. There's legal and moral and ethical boundaries that they have to play in. But as long as they stay within those lanes, employees are given the freedom and latitude to execute their goals as they see fit. And you know what? It really works. They're a high-performing organization, constantly innovating and leading the edge in online video delivery. I'm sure everybody here probably has a Netflix account, right? Anyone here serve in, oh, sorry, I pushed the wrong button there. In the Marine Corps? John, I did not know.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, in the Marine Corps, when they train leaders in their leadership training, they have this concept of commander's intent, right? So there's less emphasis placed on memorizing solutions to problems, and instead, power is given to small unit commanders who have ground truth and freedom to achieve the commander's goals. And it requires strong communication throughout the organization, and that those unit commanders understand the commander's thought process and objectives. But the outcome is a group of Marines who can improvise and adapt and overcome as situations on the ground change.
Sure. Yes. Got it.
So in both of these organizations, excellence is giving people the responsibility to achieve goals and the freedom to run with the ball without a whole bunch of red tape. As leaders, we can really create environments that give people the opportunity to excel and to put their best effort forward. So we have to create that space that allows them to put their best effort forward. So the next point I want to talk about is investing in others. So I grew up in this little town in New Mexico called Rio Rancho. And there's not a whole lot for a kid to do in Rio Rancho. It was an East Coast retirement community, so there are a lot of grandparents that moved there to retire and not a lot of kids. My parents divorced when I was pretty young, and so I didn't have a whole lot to do. But when I was 7 years old, my mom had saved up enough money to send me back to New York to visit with my family. And I spent 3 months out there with my Nana and my aunt and my cousins. My favorite cousin was Paul. This is Paul here. He was a bodybuilder. And he was 11 years older than me. I get a little choked up thinking about him. But, excuse me. So he was 11 years older than me. He was just out of high school. And I went everywhere with that guy that summer. You know, every time I rehearsed this, I never got hit emotionally. But, sorry. Debbie started it.
She's a crier.
Yeah. Anyway, he's 11 years older than me. He just got out of high school. And he took me everywhere with him that summer. I was 7 years old. He was 18. And I could not, looking back now, I can't figure out why an 18-year-old would want a little kid hanging out with him all summer. We did crazy stuff. I mean, he taught me how to ride dirt bikes, and I don't think you can ride three-wheelers anymore. I think they're illegal, especially not down the street in New York. But we had so much fun. We shot guns. He taught me how to drive when I was 10. It was crazy. How to water ski. And as a young boy, I gained this exposure to this whole new world. It gave me self-confidence, and it gave me exposure to things that I never would have had before. I spent nearly every hour of that summer with him. And then for the next 9 years, he did the same thing every single summer, 3 months of his life that he had me tag along. I don't understand why he did it. He should have been interested in college or a job or hanging out with his friends or the opposite sex. But his investment in me over those summers was the most valuable investment that anybody did in my growing up years. And I had a lot of fun. It was a great time. But looking back now, it wasn't really about the fun. It was about the investment that he made of his time to give me the opportunity to experience things that I never would have done before. He didn't have to have me tag around with him every summer, but he put his best effort forward to make sure that I had a good time. That was his example of excellence to me as a young child. All right, enough of the emotional stuff. So I once had an employee who was transferred over to our team. And I had observed this guy working for a couple years. And he was very smart, but he's also very introverted, very quiet. He's difficult to engage with in conversation. Kind of one of those guys, you say something and you expect something back, but it just doesn't quite happen. And but he worked really hard at what he did. And he worked in this very narrow, focused area. He had one very unique specialty that he focused on. He never worked on anything else. So he came over to our team, and I thought, man, this guy, if he could just branch out a little bit, he could be so much more valuable and so much more happy, I think. And so I began to invest in him. Over the next several months, I worked with him to establish a rapport. Sometimes our one-on-ones would have a lot of silence in them, and it was a little bit awkward at times. But over time, he began to loosen up and open up. As he started to trust that I was genuinely interested in him as an individual, he began to transform. And after a few months, we were talking about this new thing that we were going to be creating, and he asked if he could work on that. Now, this was outside of this little narrow area that he had always focused in. But I believe that he was, because of the time that I had invested in that relationship, it had opened him up to new opportunities. And he was free to explore and to put his best effort forward, which was something he didn't have prior to joining our team. And so I learned the importance of investing in the excellence of others. And this goes two ways. It is important not only to invest in someone, but it's also important to have someone in your life that is investing in you. Someone who's more experienced or wiser or older, although doesn't have to be older, but someone who can help you learn and grow. It's about investing in other people's excellence. So my last story is on humility. I worked at a company for 7 years. This is a few jobs ago. I had a lot of career growth while I was there. In my first 2 years, I went from a software engineer, individual contributor, to a team lead, to a manager, to a group manager, and then to the director of the engineering group. I had a manager who invested a lot in me, and he mentored me and helped me develop and grow as a leader. Eventually, he moved on to a new company, and there was this opening for his role. He was the vice president of the company, vice president of technology, actually. And the president wanted to fill this role with somebody internal, so he asked myself and my peers if any of us were interested in the position. And both myself and a peer of mine kind of threw our hat into the ring and expressed interest. I knew that I probably wasn't ready for this job. I think it was too much of a jump for me at the time, but I expressed some interest anyway because I was kind of adventurous. I knew that my peer, who also expressed interest, was better qualified. She had much more experience than I did. I was still a new manager, and being responsible at an executive level was more than I was ready for. So at some point, though, I withdrew my name, and my peer got this job. She got promoted. And over the next few months, about 6 months, our relationship really began to sour. And it became very difficult and strained. And maybe that was because I was disappointed that I didn't follow through, so I probably had a lot to do with how that relationship went. But regardless of what caused me to, for that relationship to sour, it all came to the point one summer evening. She called me at home about an issue when the conversation, there was a lot of conflict, and the conversation got pretty heated. And it all ended with her saying, and I quote, "I really doubt your leadership skills." And I responded back, and I quote, "Are you kidding me?" But she wasn't. She wasn't kidding. She really felt that way. And a few days later, I was called into her office. I thought I was going to be fired, but what happened seemed like it was even worse. I got demoted, right? So I was a director of engineering, and instead, I got moved underneath another manager, individual contributor role. And one of my direct reports was promoted into my position that I had vacated. So this was a huge hit on my pride. I was angry and hurt. I felt betrayed, and I was embarrassed. So I started plotting my revenge. Right? My first instinct was to figure out how I was going to sabotage my new boss. And what about my chosen successor, my direct report? Right? If I could make him fail, then she would be, wrong for having made this organizational change. Everyone would know that it was wrong, and then I would win. But there was really something deep inside of me that kept telling me that this was the wrong course of action. Something said that, in spite of the circumstances, I needed to put my best effort forward. So I took some time off, got my head straight, and when I came back, I was committed to making my boss and my successor successful. I probably worked harder in that role to make other people successful than I ever have. And previously I had invested a lot into my people, but not necessarily into other people, right? Like laterally. But it was all that I could do to help make them successful. I helped my successor transition people and projects over to him. Never spoke ill about my boss, my former boss. I humbled myself, and I looked for the opportunity to learn and grow in the season. Sometimes I didn't feel like doing it. In fact, I'd say most of the time I didn't feel like doing it, but I did it anyway. And in the end, I am really glad that I did. See, I worked in that role for 2.5 more years. I learned a lot about myself and where I needed to grow to be a better manager and a better leader. I learned that people respected me more for taking the high road than for just finding somewhere else to work or do what everybody expected me to do, which was just kind of badmouth her and be really overly negative about it. My boss, the one who demoted me, at one point told me that I was a much different and bigger person than she thought I was. I had earned her respect as well. Looking back at this event, it really shook me to my core. I had to consider if I had the chops to be a leader. Maybe I was a fraud or an imposter. Maybe I shouldn't have moved up those ranks so quickly. I had a lot of self-doubt. But now I know that every event in life is an opportunity to learn and to grow and to put your best effort forward. So for me, excellence in this case was doing my best even when I didn't want to. So how does putting your best foot forward in all circumstances build a thriving culture? Well, I believe that excellence is contagious. As I mentioned before, people at work want autonomy, mastery, and purpose. They get highly motivated when they get that. And I believe that that's a contagious snowball-like effect that goes throughout an entire organization. There's a movie called Facing the Giants, and there's a great example of a football coach who pushes one of his players to put his best effort forward. The coach motivates the player, gives him an opportunity to excel. The player responds by putting forth his best effort, and then there's a side effect for the whole team. So excellence is a journey, not a destination. It's something that we need to work at every single day, becoming a little bit more excellent than we were the day before. So I'm going to leave you with these two questions. As a leader in your business or in your home, what are you doing to create an environment that allows others to put their best effort forward? And as someone who follows a leader, what ways do you ensure that you are making your best effort in all circumstances? Thanks again for letting me share, and be excellent.